All right, so you got another deal, got another close, got more followers, all the things just up and up. But yet, after that moment, 20 minutes later, you're back to the same emptiness. And that's not random. That's actually something that's meant to expose where exactly we're still trying to perform and where we're lacking a sense of fulfillment in. And if you've ever wondered why success doesn't seem to stick, especially as long as maybe you'd like after reaching mountains and other highs, this is for you because this is going to break down why. What we have in front of us is a leaking bucket because we just want to be able to draw this picture for you to be able to see what's really happening inwardly when it comes to you succeeding externally, but then still coming home to some kind of loneliness, emptiness, and a void that you can't seem to work around. Okay. So you are pouring achievement after achievement into this bucket. Okay. And we're just going to, you know, draw this to the best of our abilities. I'm no artist. Okay. But like, this is definitely the water, right? That is pouring into this bucket. Okay. And, this is meant to be a picture of what it really looks like for you when it just comes to you doing all of this work. Okay. It's achievement after achievement, win after win, close after close, sale after sale. Okay. And we're trying to continuously fill this bucket with all types of achievements. Okay. Maybe for some of you, it's less about your business, more about the achievement of what you feel like you get, from certain relationships, certain high fives, appraisals, compliments. Okay. All the different things. All right. But being the high achiever that you are, you can relate to this because you see this every day. All right. And, the problem with this is that you actually never get to a place of allowing this bucket to fill. Even though you pour and you pour and you pour, you give and you give and you give. Okay. The struggle with all of this is that it never actually is able to fill you up. Okay. It's never actually there to fill you up. And it actually creates more of a struggle than it ever does as a sense of help. Again, at the top, this represents the achievements, okay, accomplishments, the wins, the successes, okay. For some of you, this is the followers, the platform, right? As long as your business is on the up and up, you're on the up and up. And you feel like all doing all these things is going to eventually get you to the place of filling up, you know, to the brim, right? Like filling up all the way up top. But the problem is we actually have a huge crack at the bottom of this thing. Okay. We have a huge crack. Okay. And this huge crack is actually what's keeping us from filling up all the way to the top. Okay. And this is the actual identity gap. Okay. That no one's actually named for you. Right. Because this whole time, your identity has been put into the business, it's been put into the success of the business. And we know this because at any given moment, when the wins, the followers, the business, these things are just kind of fluctuating, you start to enter this funk where you're experiencing and focusing a lot more on lack, right? Like you just can't see your way out. You start getting into these sunken, deep, dark, depressive states. And because some seasons are just really lower than others, right? Everything that we're experiencing that is more on the up and up when things are good is all based off of the external things that are happening for us that we feel are favorable. Okay. And that's kind of how we know that this ID gap is there. And everything you pour in really just drains you right back out. Okay. Because actually none of this water that's colored at the bottom, right, is actually something that stays. Like because of this, right, we actually see it start leaking out. Right. And these are like my little raindrops here. Okay. But you can see how like this is actually not even getting us to a certain place. And so what we start experiencing are moments, okay, where instead of it actually even being filled up, we start seeing it halfway filled up. Right? We can't even get it to a decent place because it's constantly leaking because we're constantly not dealing with the bigger issue at hand. And this is what we want to expose in this entire video of just breaking down and explaining to you that the success that you're constantly building isn't what actually brings you this sense of fulfillment. Yet it's what you've been trained to view your life through the lens of all this time. Okay. And it doesn't work because the problem was never the amount that you were pouring. Okay. In terms of the wins, the achievements, the successes. Okay. It was actually in the crack that we have yet to deal with. Okay. It's the hole, it's the leak. All right. And here's what the actual hole is. Okay. Somewhere along the way, all right, in your journey of building your business, of building your platform, of building all these things that you've been cultivating for months, years at a time. Okay. You came from nothing, you became something, you wanted to succeed as bad as you wanted to breathe. Okay. Somewhere along the way, where what this actually exposes, all right, is that everything that you've been trained to have up to this point, was all conditional. Okay. And when we talk about it being conditional, okay, this definitely goes to the extent of you feeling full, you feeling enough, you feeling loved. Okay. This big word down here is definitely what you've been operating by. Everything has been treated in a conditional lens. Okay. You've earned through output. Everything has been focused on you performing. Okay. So the idea of somebody even wanting you as you are doesn't even really fully compute because your entire life, you've been having to prove your value to so many other people to even get an opportunity to do what you love to do. Okay. So you've been living in a place of performance. All right. You've been living in a place of inadequacy and really struggling with the belief, even in low moments, that you're enough. Okay. And so all of these things that again are based off of how much you're pouring, how much appraisal you get, how many wins you get, obviously that we're trying to stack our bucket up and we're constantly trying to pour into, but we're realizing we're not actually getting to this place of fulfillment because you did the business, you landed the client, you had the money, you've done all the things, and yet you're still struggling. You're still coming at home feeling like you're alone in your marriage or in your singleness. You still don't feel loved. You still don't feel enough. You still feel like you're chasing. You're exhausted. You're tired. Okay. You're carrying all this weight, okay, from everything that's around you. All right. Because anytime the results stopped, right, we had to deal with what was on the inside. We had to deal with what this stuff was really exposing. And that was the lack that we were building this entire business off of. We were building all of these things off of. And we're seeing how it's not lasting. And so the belief is the whole. All right. And no amount of achievement actually patches it. All right. We can't, this isn't one of those moments where we just put duct tape over it and we silence it. Okay. Because achievement was never designed to be the patch. It was never designed to be the thing that we cling to that allows us to feel better about ourselves in the event that life just maybe isn't going in a favorable direction. Okay. It's water, right? Just like the water that's shown in this picture, this, bucket picture, if you will. Okay. Like this is the how much your achievements actually matter. I mean, it's as fleeting as water. Okay. It's supposed to be extra. It's not supposed to be foundational, right? It's not supposed to be something that you need to exist. You need to survive. You need to prove that you're enough compared to others around you, your peers, your friends, your family, maybe ranking up in the business. It's supposed to be something that's additional to your life because in the case that it does start going away, we are no longer feeling like we're not enough or that we're not worth anything else. We're not worth love. We're not worth the marriage. We're not worth the connection because of the things that we believe we don't have or the things that we've been trained to believe that we needed to have to qualify to do and experience the life we've always wanted. Okay. So you see how this leak is created and the identity gap that's present, right? The identity within conditional things, conditional love, conditional experiences. So we've been basing our entire identity based off output performance and in a lot of ways inadequacies that have caused us to do more to try to fill this bucket up. I want you to pay attention to this second bucket that we'll draw. Okay. And again, even though your boy's no professional artist, we're going to make this make sense. Okay. Because with this bucket, all right, forgive the the imbalancing here. All right. But this second bucket that we're sitting in front of, all right, what's crazy is already full. Okay. Like this bucket here is already full. Okay. Full to the brim. No leaks, no patches, no gaps, no cracks. Okay. And this is all just to show in a lot of different directions with this full bucket. All right. That this is actually coming without constant pouring. Like, notice how in this bucket, we're not going to actually feed into this by drawing another thing that's pouring into it. Because we sometimes think that the bucket can only be filled when we're pouring into it. And even though, obviously, on the external and outside looking in, that might seem like it makes the most sense. But regarding this bucket, it's more like a well. Okay. So if we were to just draw what actually it may look like on the surface, okay, or that's what it kind of looks like on the surface, right? We see it full. But what we actually have here is a well of water, right? That kind of is sprouting up. And from this well of water, right, is actually what is allowing this bucket to be full from the ground up, from the inside out. Okay. Because if you think about how a well is dug, right, it's not actually pouring, no one is actually going in and pouring water into the well to allow the well to actually survive. What we're seeing, okay, is this well, although man made and although handmade, okay, is a well that began with digging downward, right, to hit something and within the ground that was able to spark up, right, the water that was coming alive. Okay. And so this well is actually springing water from the inside instead of needing external things to fill the well with healthy water. Okay. And so it stays full without constant pouring because it's fed from underneath instead of the top. And that's actually what we're defining as worth. Okay. This is actually where we're going to find our worth, value, identity. Okay. A sense of fullness. Because all of this stuff is coming from the inside, okay, internal, instead of something external that we have to become codependent on to define this sense of worth, fullness, value, and identity. Okay. So, whereas the beginning bucket had a lot to deal with the external and being codependent on things pouring in, wins, successes, fame, status, money, clients, closing business deals. Your business is excelling. Therefore, you got a smile on your face. This is the well that we actually want to build. Okay. That has us really focusing on the internal, because the internal is what allows us to have steadiness even when the external doesn't match it. Okay. And this is where we really want to be. This is the kind of bucket we really want to build. Okay. Because this is actually allowing us to patch the hole, which again we exposed in the beginning, which was the identity gap. Okay. By doing the identity work that allows our worth to not be determined by the highs and lows of the business, the highs and lows of the marriage, the highs and lows of the relationship, the highs and lows of closing clients. The business is excelling. You're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. All is well. But the moment that that business stops making that kind of money, you hit a wall. It's a low season. Now, all of a sudden, we begin to question our worth, our value. We begin to no longer see life in fun, full colors. We no longer are able to see the value of what's around us, living in this abundance. And all of a sudden, we start noticing that my peace is challenged by what's happening external and the level of success that I'm gaining. And that's how we know we're playing the wrong game. Okay. Because when we do this identity work, all right, and this hole is patched, okay, ultimately achievement becomes what it was always supposed to be. Well, what was it always supposed to be? It was actually supposed to be something that was, we put achievement and what it was really supposed to be, instead of our identity, instead of, the green light to feel like we're qualified, we're enough, okay, or in any way, shape, or form that we're available to provide, have the relationship, that we're qualified, okay, to actually do the things we want to do, enjoy the life that's in front of us. All right. This is actually supposed to be something that is now enjoyable and not something that is necessary for us to live. Okay. This now becomes something that we journey for and not something we have to hurry to. Okay. This is something that is additional. Okay. And not something that is life defining. And overall, this is something that we're able to hold with an open hand, not with a closed fist. Because how many people do we know that actually live by their achievements, right? They introduce themselves by the degrees they have, the money they have, the successes they've had, the titles that they have. But if you take all that away, we're left with questioning who we are, the fullness of our life. What brings us the most meaning? What brings us the most value? And when we build from a place of internal worth instead of building based off of external accomplishments, we have a full life, full experience, satisfaction, joy, abundance, all the things that you're chasing your business and perhaps even chasing relationships as a means to find, but you haven't had any luck. And it's because we're struggling with the gap that is presented through the identity. Okay. So you can still love closing the deal. Nothing's wrong with that. You can still love, closing deals and seeing your platforms grow. And none of that is evil. None of that's wrong. None of that's bad. No, no, no. That's just us recognizing that this is what comes with the growth. This is what comes with us putting the right frameworks together and building on the business. But in the event that things go low, in the event that seasons don't turn out to be as favorable, okay, we actually realize that we just stop needing it to fill us up. Okay. We just stop needing it to feel like who you are in your abundant, full way. Okay. Because when we're full, we see things a lot differently than we do when we're moving in lack and we're constantly trying to perform and exhaust ourselves to prove that we're worth something. Okay. And this exact identity gap that we're just talking about here regarding the internal versus the internal world being greater than the external world, and not living your life based off of the achievements that you gain. Okay. This is something that we actually break down in a cornerstone video on this channel, discussing the real reason. Okay. Why you keep getting hurt in relationships and why, in all honesty, your relationships aren't even the problem. Okay. Whether that's business relationships or your personal marriage, dating, all the things, so many things that we like to blame the external for isn't really what the issue is. It's what it's revealing about us. Okay. And so I need you to go watch it if you haven't, because it's going to break down this even deeper and more practical. So you can actually follow along a little bit more clearer. All right. Because it just names it precisely and where that hole comes from regarding your identity gap. All right. And the next time that you see another video from this point forward, you're going to run into us just talking about more of the outside application. Okay. And how to actually vet a relationship. Okay. The way you already know how to vet everything else in your life that matters. And now that we will have the principle of doing it from a place of fullness, this is how we're going to continue to develop the healthiest relational discernment available. And I can't wait to see you in that video. Be sure to subscribe for more, turn on your post bell notifications so you know when we upload it. And I'll see you then.